may obtain a request to be heard from staff for any presentation they may have for the meeting. In accordance with policy, the request to be heard forms must be submitted to the secretary within the first 5 minutes of the board meeting in order to be heard at this meeting. Agenda items are subject to reordering at the discretion of the board president. Please attend the entire meeting to ensure you're able to hear any discussion. Thank you.
It was tough, but my sister's got to go, so she's doing really good actually. So what happens, Brooks, is that they're going to call us. Just get out of the boat and you guys will answer they may ask questions. Next week is and at some point we'll shake their hands. Usually to make sure. How's your summers? Have you slept at all this summer? Just got one more right that don't play. I just did. It's really bad actually. While you're thinking. No, I first
Pursuant to Section 841411 of the Nebraska statutes, the next regular meeting of the Board of Education of Douglas County School District 0001 and the Board of Educational Service Unit Number 19 will be held on Monday, July 15th, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. in the board meeting room of the Teacher Administrative Center, 3215 Cummings Street. The agenda will be kept current and available for public inspection in the office of the Secretary of the Board of Education at the Administrative Building during regular working hours pursuant to Section 841412 of the Nebraska statutes. The public is hereby informed that a current copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is posted in the board meeting room on the north wall. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Vice President Dr. Holman will lead us in the OPS vision and mission statement.
The vision: every student, every day, prepare for success. And our mission: Omaha Public Schools prepares all students to excel in college, career, and life.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Cassidy. Gadding. Present.
Holman,
Present.
Cracky,
Here.
Pearlman, Ryan,
Present.
Smith,
Here.
Snipe,
Present.
Snow.
Here.
8 present.
Thank you. Mrs. Cassidy had a prior engagement to tonight's meeting. I will entertain a motion to excuse her from tonight's meeting.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor by Dr. Holman, second by Ms. Ryan. Roll call.
Cracky,
Aye.
Pearlman, Ryan,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Snipe,
Aye.
Snow,
Aye.
Godding,
Aye.
Holman.
Aye.
7 aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to School Spotlight with Mrs. Monique Farmer.
Good evening, Board President Snow, members of the Board, and Superintendent Dr. Cheryl Logan. We are pleased to present this evening students who represented Omaha Public Schools in the Nebraska High School Theater Academy Award Showcase. They are tonight's OPS Proud Spotlight. On June 7th, the Omaha Performing Arts presented their annual Nebraska High School Theater Academy Showcase at the Orpheum Theater to recognize the outstanding achievements of high school musical theater production and students. Hundreds of musical productions were judged from across the state, and OPS students won the following categories. Burke High School won Outstanding Musical Theater Production for Big Fish. Beveridge Magnet Middle School won Outstanding Middle School Music Theater Production for The Theory of Relativity. 2 students won Outstanding Actor in a Lead Role. Al Griffin of South High Magnet, who played Sebastian from The Little Mermaid, and Boston Reed of Burke High School, who played Edward Bloom from Big Fish. Jamie Gold of Burke High School won Outstanding Actress in a Lead Role as Sandra Bloom from Big Fish. 3 students won Outstanding Actor in a Supporting Role. Colin Burke of Central High School, he played Benny South Street from Guys and Dolls. Raymond Butler of Benson High, who played Ballin from Dogfight, and Will Rogers of Burke High, who played Amos from Big Fish. Sarah Tiemann of Burke High School won Outstanding Actress in a Supporting Role as The Witch from Big Fish, and the Backstage Excellent Award went to Central High School. 2 of our students, Boston Reed of Burke High and Lily Week of Central High, were nominated as 2019 national finalists to represent Nebraska at National High School Musical Theater Awards Program in New York later this month. Lastly, we would like to recognize Linda Hulsey, supervisor of K-12 vocal music, who received an award for Lifetime Achievement in Education. Linda retires this school year, and we appreciate her dedication to the Omaha Public Schools. At this time, please join me in welcoming Emily Mokrisky, Theater Director for Burke High School and also Co-Chapter Director for Nebraska State Thespians. She will come to the podium and give some brief remarks, but I'd also like to recognize Principal Dr. Edward Bennett from Central High School for being here, Gay Landon from Burke High School, and then we also have Tom Schick with Beveridge. And if I miss somebody, Emily, if you could help me when you come up. Thank you. Langston Friesen also.
I'll keep it brief. We're just very, very proud of our OPS Burke students. It was so exciting to have 4 high schools and 1 middle school that was recognized. We also had a Burke alumni, Q Smith, who's currently starring in Broadway, that hosted the event. So it was really great, and she gave some shout outs. She graduated from Omaha North, I'm not sure what year. So we had a lot of OPS representation at the showcase. It's the 6th year it's been in existence, and these students get to attend master classes. There are probably 8,000 students involved in this program, and so to have amongst the 500 kids that were there that night be so many of our students, we were very, very proud. And then this is Tony Schick, and he's just going to talk a little bit about the middle school.
Thank you. So this is the very first year they awarded a middle school award for outstanding production, and Beveridge is incredibly pleased that we got the inaugural award for best musical production for the state of Nebraska. So, and we have some of our students are here tonight to represent from all these different schools. So big congratulations to them, because they put a lot of time and effort into this. Thank you.
Students, if you guys could stay at the podium, I would, if you could just briefly introduce yourself, what school you go to, and what play. We do have some graduating seniors as well, and if you're graduating, what are your plans after high school?
My name is Boston Reed. I'm from Burke High School. I just graduated, and I will be attending Doane in the fall. And my school did Big Fish this year, so.
Hi, I'm Michaela Estelle from Beveridge Magnet Middle School. I'm going to Central High School, and my school did Theory of Relativity.
Hi, my name's Aaliyah Epps. I was from Beveridge, and now I'm going to Burke. I was in Theory of Relativity.
My name's Silly Week. I went to Central High School, but now I'm going to NYU to study drama. And I was a national finalist, and I was Sarah Brown in Guys and Dolls.
My name is Noemi Gilbert. I went to Beveridge and I'm going to Central next year, and my school did the Theory of Relativity.
Hello, my name is Will Rogers. I'll be a junior at Burke next year, and my school did Big Fish.
Hi, I'm Al Griffin. I go to Omaha South. I'm an upcoming senior, and I was Sebastian in The Little Mermaid.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much for representing OPS and making OPS proud. I'll open up to my colleagues if you guys have any questions for these amazing students. Mrs. Gotti.
So I just want to congratulate all of you. I was able to see a few of you perform this year, so I saw Boston and Will in Big Fish, and I've seen Lily perform at Central before as well, and congratulations to the two of you as you go on to New York. They couldn't have picked two better people to go, I think, and so how wonderful. And I always tell people, if you really, really want to have a inexpensive date, and you want to watch really great entertainment, go to one of our theater productions because it's fantastic. So I took my husband with me this year, and he was very impressed. And so I just encourage everyone to do that. You're a talented group, and we look forward to seeing some of you continue on in our school system, and some of you we may see performing elsewhere in the future. So we wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you. Dr. Holman.
Hi, I just want to say congratulations to you all. It's so wonderful to see such amazing talent standing before all of us and representing Omaha Public Schools. I was just wondering if you would be able to hold the award up high so that we can all see it, please. Awesome. Thank you. Very nice.
Thank you guys so much. We would love to shake your hand and congratulate you for making us OPS proud and representing Omaha Public Schools, and give you a small token of our appreciation, our OPS Proud Pin. So if everybody in the room, just give these students another round of applause and congratulate them.
Good job.
We're taking the picture now. We need to get signed.
Okay, make them get in the center. Tall people in the back. Yep, Gayle, you gotta stand on your tiptoes. All right, this way. And Emily, just a little bit down here. Yep. There you go. Just a little bit more, just a little bit. See Dr. Logan's face. Perfect, that's perfect.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to go for it again. Okay. Okay. Big smiles. 1, 2, 3. Take one more. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Thank you.
told me to look out for them.
Moving on to board and superintendent communications, starting off with our treasurer's report with Mrs. Byrd.
President Snow, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Logan, the financial statements for the period ended May 31st, 2019 have been finalized and uploaded for your review.
Thank you. Moving on to Superintendent Dr. Logan.
Good evening, President Snow, members of the Board of Education, and those in attendance and those watching at home. I would like to begin my remarks today by speaking a little bit about the trip last week that I was able to take with many of our high school students. It has 17 here, but actually there was 41, I believe, total from OPS. We had several students from Burke High School. That was our largest contingent. And we also had students from Central. We had students from Bryan. We had students from North, and I believe, and South. So we had all of those, 6 of our 7 high schools were represented. It wasn't a very memorable occasion. The students participated in 3 official events in Brittany, the cemetery in Brittany, the cemetery at Omaha Beach, and at the St. Mary Glees, where there was a significant event featured in a movie that most people know, The Longest Day. It was an amazing opportunity for me to experience that with our young people, and I know it's something that I will not forget, and I will say that students did a remarkable job. We're looking forward to them coming and perhaps sharing some of their experiences at some future date here with the Board of Education. But to watch on their faces as they got to meet veterans of World War II and to participate in the official ceremonies representing the state of Nebraska and the United States of America was very special. And to hear your national anthem and the national anthem of France at the same time at the cemetery was something that I know that I personally will never forget, and was really, really moving. I'd like to also, the next thing I want to talk about is our summer reading challenge. It's kind of a strange segue, but our summer reading challenge, we had initially asked students to read 1 million minutes. They have surpassed that goal. They read significantly more than 1 million minutes, and as I think I said last time, I moved it up to 3 million minutes, and I'm sure that they're going to get there with aplomb. So I want to give a special recognition to Edison Elementary School that remains in the lead, and their fabulous leader, Mrs. Melanie Fullingcamp, who I know is leading the charge there, and also to Miller Park School, and this leads us into our new principal, who will be at Miller Park, who is here, and that is Dan Kircheval. He is here. I'm going to have the principal stand, if they would not mind, so that the members of the board and the audience can recognize you. We'll hold all of our applause to the end, but we'll start with Dan Kircheval. He's transitioning from instructional facilitator at Highland Elementary. He's been in the district many, many years, and he will lead Miller Park Elementary School. Also present is Lynette Keys. She is a fantastic principal at Standing Bear and will transition to Masters Elementary School. And thank you for being here, Principal Keys. Also, Luann Jacobs is here. Luann is the OPS instructional supervisor and will now lead Wilson Focus School. I know she's really excited. She was actually here for another time, but her date wasn't until today to be on the board agenda. So we're really happy to have you here, Mrs. Jacobs. Also present is Nathan Buchholz, and I see his son is with him too, so you can stand, son, because I know you're proud of your dad, and that's really nice for you to be here, Nathan. Well, Nathan is currently the assistant principal at Lewis and Clark and will lead Fullerton Magnet Elementary School. Also present, Melita Wilson. Melita Wilson will transition from being instructional facilitator at King to lead Lothrop Elementary School. We're super, super proud of each and every one of you, and to you, Ms. Wilson. Bridget O'Melia is here. Bridget is currently the assistant principal at Druid Hill Elementary School and will lead Standing Bear. So she has a fantastic mentor in Principal Keys, and we're really excited for her. And Langston Friesen is here. He was in Beveridge a few minutes ago, and now he's transitioned to being the principal of Rose Hill Elementary School. Each and every one of you are well prepared to lead your schools, and you'll have plenty of support as you move forward into that endeavor. So we could just give them a round of applause. That would be terrific. As school leaders, you can be seated now, sorry. As school leaders, you have the most important jobs in the building, in the school district, and we certainly, everyone here at this dais, I know, knows that. Lastly, I'm going to recognize a student who is here on a special mission. He is here taking notes on the meeting, and he is earning his merit badge in citizenship in the community, and that is Angel Shories, and Angel is a 7th grader in Nathan Hale. So Angel, if you could stand, and we'll give you a round of applause too for being here. And I hope we have something that's really remarkable for you to put down on your sheet as you earn your merit badge in leadership in the community. Those conclude my remarks this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Logan. We'll now open it up for board members' comments. All righty. Moving on to, we don't have any, okay, no public comment today. So moving on to the consent agenda, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda that is here before us.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion on the floor by Dr. Holman, second by Ms. Cracky. Any abstentions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Before we do,
Mr.
Starr, I
Perlman.
just have a quick question.
Is your mic on?
Yeah, I think. Trying to find a particular. It was the one for IT. It's I-19.
I-19.
I just have a quick question. If we could pass on that, pull it, and
Go ahead. Do you have a question?
yeah. I guess my question is, I see.
But point of order, we really need to, we can't do that during consent. We've got to pull it off.
Right. That's what.
So, are you pulling it off? You want to pull it off the consent agenda?
Thanks.
Okay. Dr. Holman, would you modify your motion? You just pull your motion and do it without I-19. So you would,
I move to accept the consent agenda excluding I-19.
Second.
there's a motion on the floor accepting, approving the consent agenda exception for I-19, which is being pulled. Motion by Dr. Holman, second by Ms. Cracky. Any abstentions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Perlman. Ryan.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Snipe.
Aye.
Snow.
Aye.
Goding.
Aye.
Holman.
Aye.
Cracky.
Aye.
8 aye.
Motion carries. And I apologize, I am overcoming sore throat today. So moving on to J1A, legislative review, John Lindsay. Lindsay O'Hara.
Well, good evening. You may have read in the paper that the state is safe, the legislature has adjourned. You may also have read that it kind of ended with, I don't know, they just didn't finish business. There were a couple of major issues that did not get addressed, and I think they were left kind of a bad taste in senators' mouths as they left. I think they were all hoping to reach some agreement on things, and it just didn't happen. Those major issues, property tax relief and tax incentives for economic development, will carry over to next year, and they'll both pick up where they left off with, I believe, both at the select file or the second stage of debate. What I'd like to do tonight, though, is just go through the session about what did pass and then what we can expect for next year as far as carryover legislation, and just to give you an idea of what that will look like. We'll also touch on interim studies. Interim studies are introduced by senators to look at various issues. They may or may not result in legislation. They may or may not have hearings. If they do have hearings, obviously it's something we would bring to your attention. What passed this session? The first is that LB 31, which I've reported on before, would study come up with a work plan for transferring management of OSERS from the OSERS trustees to the state of Nebraska. That passed. They've already started work on it. A meeting today, we got a little bit of a report that the Public Employees Retirement Board has been very proactive in looking at the data, looking at what would be required. So that is already ongoing. LB 33 also passed. LB 33, the part that pertains to OSERS is that there was a kind of a loophole that would allow OSERS members private information to be made public through the interaction of OPS as a public body. You could kind of circumvent OSERS. So that was corrected, and now they are OSERS members from an information standpoint are treated the same as NPERS employees. In finance, a couple of changes. 103 will impact the board in your budget making authority. It will require an additional hearing if the valuation increases and you leave the levy, intend to leave the levy where it is, so it results in additional property tax revenue, that it would require a notice of an additional hearing, which can be done at the same time as your regular budget hearing, but does have to be separately noticed, and that has to be brought to the public's attention. LB 675 also passed. The key thing in here is that this is what implemented the reduction in TIOSA of about $25 million over the biennium, and that was included in this Department of Education cleanup bill. Other bills that passed, LB 149 addresses vaping, which we heard is an issue in the schools, even down into certainly in the middle schools. This addresses some of the issues. Primarily, it increases the age for purchase of any vaping products to age 19. LB 390 passed, which will in the future require a change in our SRO policy. As they were going through this legislation, they were looking to OPS as kind of a model policy. So I don't know that it's going to require a lot of change, because they're hoping other school districts will kind of follow the lead of OPS. LB 399 will affect the Committee on Americanism of the board. First, it changes the name to the Committee on American Civics, and then it requires additional civics requirements to be included in committee hearings and included in board policy. It would make also a couple of curriculum changes that would have to be included. most notably attendance at a meeting of a governing body. I believe that can be done virtually or through a television monitor, but will require that make a change. Finally, LB 619, which will prohibit, it changes insurance policy. It'll prohibit the denial of coverage for mental health based on where those services are provided, meaning it could be covered, assuming all other licensing is in place. You would not be, or they would not be disqualified from receiving insurance reimbursement just because the services were provided in a school setting. What carries over to the next session, and it's quite a bit. I've grouped these into subject matter rather than going through all these bills separately. They've all had hearings. We've heard about all of them. But rather than going through them, it's the subject matter that I think you'll be looking for next year. First, there's 3 bills to limit agricultural land values. That has an impact on OPS because it does change allocation of dollars from TIOSA. There were 17 bills to change the TIOSA formula that range anything from changing the base limitation rate or the local effort rate on up to a completely new rewrite of the TIOSA formula and everything in between. Most importantly out of there, LB 289 will return next year. That's the one that had the one that was being used for personal or for property tax relief. And it, I did something wrong there. And it will be back. It has a change in TIOSA that over time would do a great deal of harm to the district, including limiting our spending, but not giving credit for the fact that we have enrollment increases that are significant, and those enrollment increases tend to be poverty and LEP heavy. It does not recognize that. That was the first issue. And the second is that it dramatically increases TIOSA, but with no property tax backstop in the event TIOSA gets cut, which historically happens almost every year. There's 2 constitutional amendments to limit school spending. All these, by the way, are either on general file or still tied up in committee, most of them tied up in committee. Those 2 constitutional amendments would limit the growth of school spending, and would also, one of them would limit it to no more than 33% of school spending can come from property tax dollars, which again would be a massive increase in TIOSA. There's 4 bills to change budget procedures that would change the way you would have to address budgets. Again, I don't think these are going to be coming out next year, but they are there. LR 14CA would extend the period for TIF projects from 15 to 20 years in extremely blighted areas. Those that did pass, and it will be on the ballot in 2020, so it's not really carrying over to next session. It carries over to next fall's ballot. After that, they would have to come back for legislation that would authorize, define an extremely blighted area and authorize that extension. Then finally, LB 670 will be carried over to next session, and that is the tax credits for scholarships to private schools. And in the administration area, there's 3 bills regarding student discipline, notably LB 147, which was pulled from committee late in the session. That's, I think, where most of the debate will take place. There's 6 bills addressing mental health or behavioral health issues in schools. There is an interim study that we'll be seeing in a second that will also try to, I think, make sense out of the various proposals and try to pull something together that would provide some additional assistance in schools with respect to mental health and behavioral health issues. The student journal, there's a variety of other issues, student journalism, freedom of speech, teacher mentoring programs, review of performance improvement plans, which I think is going to get some, I don't know how much traction it'll get, but it will be discussed quite a bit. Arming school teachers, I think, will stay in committee. Virtual schools, we had a meeting with Senator Wayne late in the session, and it turns out that would be a wash, basically, in funding. So he is going to come back with a different virtual schools proposal next year, and we'll see what that looks like, and hopefully we'll be working with him. And then finally, another bill on alternative teacher certification that remains in committee. You have not seen movement on it. Interim studies, as I mentioned, they may or may not result in legislation. There's a couple that are standard in retirement that require a report from any underfunded political subdivisions retirement. So OPS will again appear at that hearing probably in November or early December. There's several studies that will look at school finance. I think Senator Groney's study is the one that will likely get a hearing, and that will be looking at what will happen what can happen in revamping school finance to make sure that kids can get educated, but to do something about the over-reliance on property tax. And then several of them in the administrative area. I think the one dealing with ESUs, studying ESUs and how they operate, I think that will have some priority to it. And again, as I mentioned, the behavioral health, they will try to pull together those issues in LR 160. Those studies take place usually mid-August through end of November, but they can have some hearings earlier than that or later than that. But we'll, of course, keep you apprised of which of those will have hearings and when those hearings will take place. I think, yeah. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So, thank you for your presentation and kind of wrapping up the session. Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Perlman.
Thanks for the presentation. I was just wondering, I was keeping an eye on things for education and in criminal law, and it seems like, was there an increase in late amendments to bills? It just seems like a lot happened real late, and I didn't know how typical that was.
There were a lot of late amendments to bills. A lot of them bills came out late in the session. Bills came out late in the session and included bills that were packaged from, for example, Judiciary Committee came out with a bill that had 4 or 5 bills inserted into it. Other committees did the same thing. So yeah, you saw a little bit, I think a little bit more of that this year than you typically do.
Is there a way for us as board members to track that, or is it just all kind of not known and predictable before that all kind of happens?
Well, certainly in those issues that affect OPS, we try to keep you advised of those. If in other areas, it's what we do. We read the journal every day that includes all those amendments. You can track specific bills out of a specific committee. In the case you're mentioning of education and criminal law and the intersection of those.
I would only expect you to obviously focus on the educational stuff, but I know you do a great job on notifying us of all the amendments and all that. That's not my question. I didn't know if you folks as lobbyists and people down there even know or have an ability to know that before it sees the light. Is really more my question.
Sometimes, if we're tracking a bill or a subject matter area, we try to talk to committee members to see what kind of talk's going on. So, yeah, if we're tracking a particular area, we'll generally know something's coming together.
Okay. I think my other question is LR 63. Is there a way that we can figure out the potential impact on the district as we head into that interim, study or meeting, whatever it's termed? Because I think OPS is in the unique position of being fully enwrapped in its own ESU. And so
Lincoln
is as well. So if there's any way that I could get some information in the next several months so I can be prepared to know what that all entails.
Yeah, we'll do some checking out of that over the summer and get a note off to the board of what we're hearing about it when it starts. I'm guessing, again, hearings probably in September, October.
All right, thanks.
Mr. Perlman, is that, would it be helpful to get like the budget, what it funds, and that kind of like what services are provided by our ESU? Would that be helpful?
Generally, I am familiar with that.
Okay.
But just what impact, as far as, what the goals might be for doing this and.
Yeah, I wouldn't know that.
And.
I mean, they study, I don't know that, yeah.
Right, and just what potential impacts could be.
Mr. Lindsay, is there a way that in the fall, late in the fall, I know this, you guys are gearing up for session, if you could send out kind of a summary of some of these studies as they wrap up of whether it's 63 or 143 on kind of like a one paragraph summary for members of the board if they are.
Sometimes the study is really just the one-liner.
Yeah.
Some of them, they go into it a little bit more to talk about the intent. But certainly, we can put together a little summary of those that are more extensively laid out. We can summarize what the study looks like. Those that are one-line types of studies,
perfect.
I mean, it speaks for itself. But sure, we'll put that together.
Would that be helpful, Mr. Perlman?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions on the board? Well, thank you so much, Mr. Lindsay. I appreciate you and your staff.
Yes, if you don't mind, Blair McDonald is sitting in back. Blair works very closely with
Please stand.
With me on OPS issues. She's very well versed in them as well, and she works her tail off on these issues as well.
She's your better half in the office?
What's that?
She's your better half in the office?
I work for her, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item J2A, strategic plan. And I believe it's going to be kicked off by Dr. Logan, correct? Yep. All righty.
I think board meeting before last, or maybe two board meetings ago, I spoke about some of the general timeline for our strategic planning. And we have two of our partners are actually here with us this week. One is getting ready to do a presentation on her portion, Dr. Rebecca Ryan, who will be coming up shortly. Also here this week is Dr. David Trautenberg. Rebecca is going to do a lot of the work with the focus, with the future labs. We don't call them focus groups, but future labs with our stakeholders, where there will be large numbers of stakeholders together. I will add that she also worked here previously in Omaha with the Chamber's 2040 plan, so she is very well versed with the socio-political context here in Omaha, and already has that and is now adding the education component into her portfolio. So she's going to make a short presentation. Also available this week, and he's meeting with several people, David Trautenberg, who is working on the financial pieces and giving recommendations to the, will give recommendations to the board and findings to the board on what he discovers. He will have some interviews with board members as well this week. So we're going to start off with Dr. Ryan. Come on up.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. You have a copy of this guy, I think, in your materials, and then there's a copy of something else. I believe it's like gray and black halftone. That's it. You have it in hot pink. Fantastic. Yeah. So this piece that we're showing overhead, you've seen this before. Dr. Logan has presented this before. This gives you a sense of timing, but just to kind of let you know where we are. If you look at the bottom half of page 1, tentative OPS strategic planning timeline, we are actually doing phases 1, 2, and getting ready for phase 3 right now. So we're on time, we're on track. Things are chugging along in the way that they should chug along. And I'm really confident that you're going to have something strong and ambitious and dynamic. You know, I'm a futurist and I'm an economist, which gives me like insane geek cred, I feel like. You know, like, do you get, if I was an engineer, maybe that would be a little more geek cred. But when I did the Greater Omaha 2040 project, we looked at trends in the 5 steep areas. We're going to do the same thing for you guys, but we did that with the United Way and with the Urban League. You know, it was a joint project, a 3-way project between those 3 organizations because of how things happen in this community. This community is one that things move forward in partnership. So we're inviting a lot of partners to participate in these Futures Labs. And I'm thrilled to be doing this work for your board because one of the big keys that came out of the Omaha 2040 process was the fact that, you know, Omaha's done economic development for a long time, but in terms of truly doing workforce development and having the private sector really even more strongly at the table with the K-16 system, with the public system, that there was a big opportunity for improvement there. So I'm thrilled to now be working with you on this because I feel like it's yet another sort of, you know, moving that ball down the field. So if there are any questions about this, I'll take those in just a second, but I do want to turn your attention to, I pulled it up on my phone, but the Futures Lab document, because I want to walk you through what we're going to be doing here. So the second page asks this important question, and it is your strategic plan...
Just one second.
Yeah.
Do we have that available for people to see this document here?
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
We do not have it available
All right.
for...
I can upload it while we're talking.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
We'll have you uploaded.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Well, I'll, just so that you guys know, it's all large font and a lot of pictures. You're not missing a whole bunch. But the first question on that second page is whether you're basing your strategic plan on what's past or what's coming. And part of the work that we do as futurists is we try to help you anticipate what's coming. Because when you think about the amount of time it takes to change a curriculum, or you think about the amount of time that a student spends in the district, right, we've got to be ready to prepare them for what's coming. We're asking for 12, 13 years of their lives with us. Are they future ready? Are they ready for what's coming? So the lab is broken into 2 parts, and part 1 will be in September, scheduled in September. Part 2 will happen in October. And in part 1, we will do a tabletop exercise with the participants where they will be talking about data-driven trends that we know the Omaha Public Schools will face in the future. So this new strategic plan has a true bias for what's coming. It's a bias towards the future. So Lab 1 in September, we talk about the trends that are coming, and we might talk about how families are changing, how learners are changing, how technology is changing, how the economy is changing. We'll be looking at those trends. And then in October, after we've got a good sense of the trends that we feel might be the most important for us to address in this new strategic plan, the second day of the lab comes back and has us start to design plausible scenarios for the future of OPS. So to think about it, so if you are a quant, I'm thinking about Ms. Gotting, I know that you're a CPA, right? So quants love the Excel spreadsheet stuff. So if you love the Excel spreadsheet one, day 1 of the lab is your day, because we're going to be talking about data and numbers and trends. But then if you're like some of these students who we saw earlier tonight, and like story and narrative and creativity is more your jam, in October is when we're going to be talking about stories about the future of OPS and what those stories could look like. And together we take the results of Lab 1, we take the results of the second lab, the scenario development, and we turn those, for most clients it's been between 3 and 7, usually 5 and 7, big goals that are future facing, that have their own sense of possibility, and that are tied to metrics that we can start to move against. So again, it's a 2 lab process. First lab in September, data. Second lab in October, narrative, creativity, storytelling, and out of that starts to fall some of the big audacious, dynamic goals that we want to hold ourselves accountable to. And then Dr. Keisha Ray, who's not here tonight, she's just about to have a baby. She's the third member of our consulting team. She's going to help David and myself and you guys pull this all together into a plan that you feel like is yours and that you can be proud of, that is truly future-facing. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Mrs. Gotti.
So I have a question on Phase 2, when it says board and superintendent evaluation and the engagement of stakeholders. What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, I can't speak about the board and superintendent engagement piece because I'm the stakeholder person. Yeah, but the stakeholder bits are labs 1 and 2, right, where we're helping pull some of those stakeholders together. There may be additional stakeholder work that I'm not directly engaged with.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
In regards to the stakeholder portion, how do you define stakeholder?
Siri was trying to answer that question. That was so crazy. How do we define stakeholder? Well, the way that I think about this, in my experience, is we want some of the, I'm going to call them the usual suspects. I'm going to speak in very plain language. We need some of the usual suspects, and then we need about a 50-50 blend of the usual suspects and folks that we might not normally hear from in a process like this. That should include students, right? That should include folks who maybe don't speak English as a second language but have a stake in the future of the community. It might include some of the people that we used during Greater Omaha 2040 who were some of the outliers in some of those meetings as well. So the who of who will be there, I don't have a list of all those names, but the makeup, Ms. Snipe, is that 50-50 makeup.
Well, then I guess my follow-up question would be, because I'm not familiar with what was done with the Greater Omaha 2040, who was involved with that, and then who would be the usual suspects?
Yeah, so, when we did I'll give you an example of Greater Omaha 2040. When we did that project, the usual suspects were like everybody who was on Tom Warren's board, Shauna Fosberg's board, and, David Brown's board. So those are some of the usual suspects. But then some of the unusual suspects were activists and community organizers. And we had a lot of young professionals who were engaged in the process, some through the Urban League, some through the Chamber of Commerce. But people who weren't necessarily in that decision-making age band, who, sort of make the decisions at some of the highest levels. So, and the purpose is twofold in that. It's not just to be inclusive for inclusivity's sake, but it's also because, frankly, when you have a 19-year-old, for example, sitting at that table with you, as a person who is older than that, you can't be disparaging about them. There's a level of honesty that has to take place in those discussions that's different when you have more homogenous groups of people together. So some of this 50-50 blend is about having a more honest and a more provocative conversation. Thank you.
Mrs. Snipe, I had a question. Are you wanting to know how do they find the unusual suspects to be part?
I want to know specifically who that was, because I wasn't really sure. And so I just wanted to be exact.
I know. I was just trying to figure, because community organizer like yourself, so I was just curious.
As we get closer to the Futures Labs, board members will be asked to identify folks that they feel should be a part of the Futures Lab. So everyone here will be asked to identify folks that sometimes the names have already surfaced, quite frankly, because even though they may not be in the usual groups of people that are, kind of like the normal kind of stakeholders, I kind of shy away from the usual suspects because it has a connotation that's not positive. But the folks that that we know have a lot of intel and great insight into what's going on in the community, especially how people are experiencing the school district for themselves, how maybe they experienced it, or especially how people with young children who may have a tendency to be younger are experiencing the school district, and can give us great insight into what their hopes and aspirations are for the futures of their children. And so I think there'll be lots of, I know there will be opportunity for folks to have that input. Is that helpful, Mrs. Knight? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Logan. Any other questions? Mrs. Godin.
I see on the document that we have the cost, and I guess I would just like to ask Dr. Logan, I believe that's all being covered through grants, and if you could share with us the total cost of the strategic plan, and then confirm for the public that it's being covered through grant funds.
I actually don't have the total amount. I want to say it's about 2 something. This part, when we add all of the different folks who are participating, all of it is being covered by a grant through one of our generous funders. So we're not expending school district funds for our strategic planning. Sometimes there's a hybrid formula, often because the school district should have significant skin in the game, and we are fortunate to have a funder who's agreed to cover the entire cost. But I believe it's around do I have it right? About 220,000. I think in comparison to it's about half of what was expended for the previous strategic plan, which came in at around about $500,000. This one is about 220,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Perlman.
I just have a question. My microphone is very sensitive. I just have a question about Phase 3, if we're still, from a time-wise standpoint, on track.
We will do almost all of the stakeholder groups, Future Labs, in September, October. This will be done by the end of October. We'll have November for the writing, which is really a tremendous piece of it, so that by around Thanksgiving, the board would have an opportunity to look at it before adoption in January. So you'd have about 6 weeks for the board for additional input from the Board of Education. Obviously, you're going to be participating in interviews and that kind of thing, but that would be your opportunity for, I think you would need about 6 weeks for input for our first or second meeting in January for adoption.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Well, as you guys do develop your questions over time, please don't hesitate to email them to Dr. Logan, and she will get you an answer with the Future Labs. Thank you so much, Ms. Rebecca Ryans. Finally, a chance to get to meet you in person, so that's good.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Pleasure. Moving on to I believe the OPS bond program update. Mr. Cozart. And I just want to make note, this is there are no pictures in this one, so this is...
Hey, well, I got a reply for that.
It's not at you, it's to Mr. Mark Summers back there, who usually loves pictures in all his presentations.
I'm Mary McHale, and I have the honor of being on the Omaha Public Schools Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. In fact, I was just saying to Mark, do we get a pin when we've been on? Because it's been 5 years.
We have an OPS proud
And there'll be
pin.
5 more. Thank you. After that, I'm going to take we call it best practices in business. I'm going to take a best practice from what was said in the strategic plan, that they're on time and on track. And not only is Phase 1 on time and on track, they're over 90% completed of all the projects that we started. OPS started in 2014. So that's huge. that everything clicked along the way it was supposed to. And for Phase 2, my personal favorite, the first project that was worked on in the 2018 bond issue, and the first one to be finished, will be the new transition building at Benson, at Ames, I don't know what you're calling it, Transition North. So that one was one right out of the gate. I mean, almost as soon as the bond issue was passed, they started working on it. So I hope you all are able to come to the dedication, which will be sometime in August. The other projects are also tracking along. The group has done great work. They're either in the design phase or they're being put out to bid, waiting for the contracts to be approved. So everything is working as it's supposed to, and we look for a repeat of the great success that we've had in 2014 with the 2018 bond issue. Thanks.
So I will do a little deep dive into what's going on with the program. So I'll begin by saying good evening to Board President Snow, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Logan. Thank you for this opportunity to give you all another update on the status of the Phase 1 and Phase 2 bond programs. Up under the 2014 Phase 1 program, as you see depicted here on the slide, there are a total of 83 active programs with 11 OPS schools that are currently in the construction phase. So out of those 11 schools, there are 6 elementary schools, and I'm not sure if everyone is familiar what's happening where, so I'll just identify what school is either in a design, construction, closeout, or finished up phase. So there are 6 schools that are elementary schools that are in the construction phase, that being Boyd, Columbian, Dodge, Guilford Park, which is just across the street. I think everybody's had an opportunity to see on a daily basis. Hardman, and just recently, since my last update, Kellum Elementary School. There are 3 middle schools that are likewise up under the 2014 bond that are under construction: Beveridge, Bryant, and Hale Middle School, along with 2 high schools, that being Bryant and Central High School. It's worth noting, and everyone should feel confident in knowing that no bond project is expected to require a delay in opening schools for the start of the 2019 school year based on construction, as a result of construction. Some may have noticed over recent days, weeks, or months, we've had an extensive amount of rain. Mitigation has been put in place to ensure that we could, on a day-to-day basis, work through unforeseen site conditions, whether it's finding asbestos inside of an existing facility, or, if there's an impediment to placing concrete, whether it's parking lots or sidewalks, again, based on the amount of moisture content of rain that we've had this year. But I can assure you at this point, all schools are scheduled to open on time from a constructability standpoint. Since my last update, an additional $7 million, or 1% of the $423 million Phase 1 contract amount has been awarded, and along with $12 million, an additional 2% has been paid out in expenditures. Of significance, opposed to my last presentation, there have been no safety infractions to any students, staff, or contractors. So in my last briefing, I indicated there have been 3 safety infractions to various contractors. There have been no safety infractions that have been recorded. For the Phase 2 program, the 2018 Phase 2 program, we have 9 schools that are in various stages of design phase. Those 9 schools are located at 60th and Nell, the new school at 156 in Ida, the Fort Crook and 10th and Pine new elementary schools, Addison, Highland, Masters, and the Spring Lake elementary schools, along with design work for the Lewis and Clark Middle School. Additionally, we have 3 schools up under the 2018 Phase 2 bond where there's some ongoing construction taking place. That being at Benson and Burke High School, the Keene Elementary School, as well as some site development which is taking place again at the 60th and Nail location and the 156 and Ida location. Likewise, we're in the process of finishing up work at the new transition program site in the vicinity of 72nd and Ames. It'd be nice if you get a chance to stop by and take a look at what's going on there. From as far as changes to the financial data points, we've awarded an additional 3% or $12 million up under the Phase 2 program since my last update, and paid down an additional $3.2 million. So just to provide a snapshot slide of an overview of the Phase 2 program, the schools, elementary, middle, and high schools that are located in the top portion in the black there, they're having various stages of either capital improvements, renovations, or additions added on to those particular high schools, elementary or middle schools, totaling $140 million worth of work. And then the schools that are listed at the bottom, the 5 schools in red, include the 2 new elementary schools, the 1 new middle school, and 2 high schools that are being constructed under the Phase 2 bond as a result of the growing student capacity, which brings the Phase 2 bond to a total of $409 million. Another significant aspect of economic inclusion portion on this slide here. So up under the Phase 1 2014 bond, it started off at, it was originally $421 million. As a result of the accrued interest being applied, it is now $423 million. That's why I sort of had a tongue twister there earlier. And as a result of that original goal of 7%, been the aspirational goal for small and emerging businesses, that additional $2 million has likewise raised what our goal would have been. As such, the numbers in blue reflect the changes since my last presentation. In each case, there's been an increase. So the bottom line, now up under the Phase 1 2014 bond, over $45.6 million or 11% has been awarded or paid out to small and emerging Tier 1 and Tier 2 businesses throughout Omaha. Our goal for the Phase 2 program, the 2018 program, as a result of the success up under the Phase 1 2014, we've doubled the aspirational goal from 7% to 15%, and upon attaining that goal, that aspirational goal, it should be about $61 million in opportunities available for small and emerging businesses. In addition to another aspect of the bond program upon their economic inclusion is student engagement. And there's nothing here on the slide that depicted, but I'd like to take this opportunity to briefly make everybody aware of an outstanding economic inclusion outreach collaboration that's taken place between OPS, Jacobs, the Boys and Girls Club of the Midlands Step Up Program, and Metro Community College. So the bottom line is there are about 15 students that next year, they're primarily OPS students, are 15. Next year they'll be entering either the 9th or 10th grade. These are young folks who, for the most part, would have never had an opportunity, or thus far, prior to this program, had not been exposed to opportunities within the architecture, construction, and engineering industry. So the bottom line, they're all either minorities by race and or females. And as I stated before, they're 9th or 10th graders in the future, and they've just not been exposed to, I can become an architect, a construction worker, or an engineer. This program will last for a 1-month time period from the 3rd to the 28th of June. And some of the activities that these young people have been exposed to, in conjunction with our home base being there at Metro Community College, it's amazing that 90% of them had never ever visited the Fort Omaha campus over at the MCC campus over at Fort Omaha. But they've had the opportunity to build concrete cylinders. Later this week, we'll go back and take those concrete cylinders and actually go through strength testing and bust those cylinders open. They've had an opportunity to be exposed to welding. They've had an opportunity, excuse me, they've had an opportunity to experience, again, welding. Today we did a physics experiment which involved building high air altitude balloons. Dr. Chris Shaban was our instructor today. Over the next couple of weeks, they have an opportunity to visit Facebook. They've received CPR training by a certified CPR licensed individual, and they'll likewise do a behind-the-scenes tour of the Omaha Zoo to see how the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing aspects of the zoo allow it to function. So again, upon the economic inclusion in the bond program, it's allowed a group of young folks who would not have had an opportunity thus far to experience architect, construction, and engineering to see what it's like. My last slide here, since I just provided a summary overview of what's going on with the bond program, anyone from any computer, if you hit the hyperlink there, it'll take you out to the web page, the bond web page, and then it'll take you to the dashboard. There's a separate dashboard for both the 2014 and the 2018. Okay, Murphy's Law is on my side. They'll take you out to the dashboard. You could pull up the 2018 and or 2014 dashboard. You can go into any project, just put any project down by name or any type of school, elementary school, middle school, whatever the case might be, a listing of the high schools. It'll give you a depiction of what amount of, okay, let me find my mouse here, what has been budgeted, the various scopes of work that's taken place at those schools, and where they align on their current and future milestones and construction timelines. I apologize, I know you all see the mouse there, but it's not showing on the screen.
It's fine. It works on our
Okay,
side. So you're good.
it's not showing here.
You're good.
So that's my last slide, so I'd like to entertain whatever questions or comments you might have.
Well, first, thank you so much for presenting this to us and going over the bond Phase 1 and Phase 2 update. We greatly appreciate it. Always keeping the voters up to date on their tax dollars and how we're using them wisely. Dr. Holman.
Thank you, Mr. Kozar, for the presentation and the information. You mentioned twice that all the buildings that are scheduled to be open in August will indeed open in August, but I just have a question in regards to Boyd, as I was informed just a couple weeks ago that it would not be ready to open at the beginning of the school year.
And, okay, so in the world of construction, and I agree with the report that you received 2 weeks ago. I actually made mention, I had suspicion that Boyd would not be prepared in time. At this point today, I stand and state that every school is expected to open on time. Boyd, as part of their mitigation, they've increased both their workforce, they've increased the amount of hours, they've come up with a mitigation plan to ensure that they're able to open. Now, when school opens at various locations, there'll still be some construction work taking place. But again, no school will be delayed in its functionality as a result of construction.
Okay, and then who will be the person to determine for certain that the building will be prepared to open for our children?
And it's a combination of people that are involved in that process, whether it's Jacobs and our folks within our Department of Building and Grounds. And I likewise will be providing reports to the superintendent and others. But there are folks assigned within Jacobs as well as Building and Grounds and myself who have various processes and requirements that they go in and do inspections on.
Okay, so at this point, you're saying that Boyd will open. Is there any chance at all that it will not open?
Well, I mean, if you say any chance, again, today, I believe it will. 30 days ago, I would say Boyd is not going to open it. Actually, 30 days ago, I reported to the superintendent, I do not believe that Boyd is in a state where they can open on time without a contract extension. They have, again, they've changed their supervision that's on site, they've increased their workforce, and they've extended the hours of the labor that they're doing out on the project. They likewise have closer supervision by Jacobs personnel, monitoring what's taking place there.
Okay, one final question.
All right.
And then, is there a deadline as to when this decision would be made as to whether or not the building will definitely be ready for usage at the beginning of the school year?
Okay. I mean, I guess the question is, is 30 days from now too late for the board to make a decision? Nope, we can't, based on feedback you receive. I can provide updates on a weekly basis on how they're progressing or not. I mean, I'm just going to call it like I see it.
But there's not like a deadline, so it's June now. Yeah. Is there a date where you say, okay, this building's definitely not ready to be open? July 1?
July 1. So Mr. Summer is going to come up and talk about it as well. Thank you, Mr. Summer. We had the information I provided to the board in reference to my concern about its readiness was provided by Mr. Cozart, and that was his opinion at that point in time, which is why I wanted to relay it as early. I actually called Dr. Holman to relay it as early as possible, and I had a conversation with Mr. Summer as well about this. We all agreed at that time that on July 1 we would make the final assessment, because if construction does go faster than I as a layperson can determine whether or not, and so rely on the professionals to tell us at each point in time whether or not they feel it's going to be ready. But we said July 1, that's what I relayed to our principal as well, that we would let them know as early as possible. And so the update today is that it's been about 2 weeks since the last report that Mr. Cozart feels it's going to be ready, and I'm just going to have Mr. Summer follow that up.
I mean, I was out there Friday. I was not out there today, so.
Thank you.
As of Friday.
Yeah, I would just echo some of the things that Carlos mentioned on manpower. The other challenge in project construction is sometimes there's disarray, there's poor housekeeping. So that's another avenue that we've really been working with the contractor on, because that's a direct impact to productivity and folks getting more stuff done. And what we really want to see is, do they have a good solid plan, and are they working that plan? No different than anything else. So that's what we ask them for. We ask them for details related to how many electricians do you need, how many drywallers do you need, and then we track that manpower kind of on a day-to-day basis, making sure they're doing what they're telling us they're going to do. The only other thing I would mention too is we do try to engage the building principal, walk them through different periods of time, because they have a lot of anxiety and they hear things as well and concerns. So as far as decision makers on, is the building going to be ready or not, we want to make sure that that person is directly involved. And then we also try to make sure that the building engineer on site, because there are a lot of the kind of the sweat and tears, if you will, when it does come to opening and moving stuff around, and the teacher's calling and I need this put up and et cetera. So try to engage those folks that are really going to be on the ground, not only so that they're comfortable with the decision and they have ownership with it, but they have the history kind of behind some of the angst or anxiety. But again, in the last couple of weeks, the contractor has really improved from a job site cleanliness perspective, sequence of work, and all the things that are necessary to get the building ready for school.
Well, that's excellent news. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Smith?
I had a question about the program that you're offering for the students. Is there college credit available for those students who are in the program? Will there be scholarships available for those students who complete the program?
Okay, so this is it's the inaugural program, so I mean, it's kind of developing. Certainly, I expect it to get better next year. The current plan is next year they'll be provide opportunities to get some internships, link them up with some of the companies that exist here in Omaha. Again, it's where they're participating in hands-on experiences It's been based on actual AE firms and general contractors that are participating in the bond program that's providing that instruction. So they're being provided exposure to those companies. So, I mean, the future is, you know, I want them to get internships. I'd like for them to be recipients of scholarships under the ACE program, and likewise be able to make it through college and then come back and find jobs here in Omaha. That's my plan, and that's what I'm going to try to make work.
With Benson, there's a $50,000 kind of surplus. Are there plans for that money?
Oh, you kind of got me on that one.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. So one of the things that we're doing as the bond program kind of wraps up from a phase one perspective, any opportunity where there are some underruns at projects, we bring that quantity of dollars back. First, we visit with the campus leadership and Tom Wagner out there and just try to identify, are there any other things that are within the scope of the bond program that those dollars could potentially be used for. Of course, there's always a yes, so we try to make sure all of those dollars are spent to the campus first. That's kind of the primary. In some great circumstances, there are some savings as you see tonight. One of the areas that we're looking to repurpose those dollars into security cameras. In a lot of the existing high school campuses, there's a lot of legacy, old systems. The district's kind of transitioned to Genetec, to a new platform, so new projects have that. We're really working through a lot of the existing buildings and identifying either where there's replacement needed or repair is needed, whatever level. We're trying to make sure that those that's one of the priority items, those type of savings dollars are helping fund.
Thank you.
You bet.
Ms. Ryan.
I just want to follow up on Mr. Smith's comment about credits and stuff like that. So I think that that's what you've envisioned so far as how this program can develop is really great, but I want to echo that providing a way for college credits or that just helps when you're in high school. I remember having the opportunity but wasn't able to afford it, and then I spent all that money going to school trying to get credits that are way more expensive. So I would just highly encourage you to seek sponsorships, funding, whatever it is, to help get kids some college credits in this way.
And I would say, you know, because we're all aware of the high cost of college. I have 3 kids who have completed college, so I'm very familiar with the high cost of college. We recently visited the Regional Carpenters Union, which is out in Papillion, and they have, you know, opportunities for folks to become carpenters, licensed carpenters, electricians, and welders.
For sure.
So going to college is not the only.
I 125% agree.
Okay.
But I'm just also saying that there are kids who might want to go down this career field as well, but they might want to look at engineering. And so if they can get some college credits towards getting to an engineering program, then let's figure out how to help them. Especially kids that are from marginalized communities that they think that they can only go into trades. Right? That's not, we don't want to force them to only go into a trade because they didn't have access to a college credit. All I'm saying.
Okay, thank you. Noted.
Mr. Smith. I mean, I looked at you, Mr. Perlman, and said Mr. Smith. Mr. Perlman.
Thank you. One question I've always had, and I'm by no means an expert on the small and emerging business programs, but when looking at, I asked this question last June and got some statistics back from the January 3rd, 2018 report, and of the 36 Tier 1 companies, 2 of them received, I don't know what the right word is, but of the money allocated, 2 firms out of the 36 received more than 50% of all the funds, and 12 out of the 36 received all but about $700,000. I understand that we can't have perfection across the board. That wouldn't even make sense, right? All 36 entities getting, say, $50,000. That's not, you know, that's not even perfection. I'm not sure who would be looking for that. But it's always been at least a concern of mine that, you know, 2 out of the 36 companies receive 55% of the proceeds. I'm just wondering what's done to make sure that there is a little more equity amongst those 36.
Okay. So the best way to answer answer that. I mean, the truth of the matter is, out of that 33 Tier 1s or 66 Tier 2s, all of the SEBs that participate within the program are not all SEBs are within the construction industry. Some folks may be in the general cleaning industry, and they can only go to the scale of perhaps a couple thousand, opposed to those that are in the construction or electronics skill sets. There's a larger margin in which, they can accumulate within by doing work, acquiring contracts. SCBs that receive contracts, they go through the same process of bidding and being selected for a contract as a large contractor would. I don't sit behind a desk, nor does anyone else, and say, this person has not had a chance, or that person. It's based on your skill sets. It's based on your submitting bids, your numbers coming in within, an expected bid amount, and then receiving the award. And again, it's different disciplines. General cleaning, somebody that's selling T-shirts, again, they will never be at the same scale as someone that's providing, hauling material or electrician. Those numbers are just never going to be the same.
I think his question, Mr. Perlman, I believe your question was, there are two companies that are construction companies that receive the majority of that work.
Right.
Correct. So I don't think it was amongst the other SEBs. I think he was comparing them to other construction companies. So if we just only did Tier 1 and Tier 2 construction companies, those two still received, if I'm correct, over half of the money allocated. So I think his question was, why, or were they just better prepared?
So again, whomever those companies are, and it could be, anonymous, you have to examine what is the capacity of whoever received the work. A company that has a capacity to go to and do $200 million worth of work, opposed to a business that has the capacity to only perform $10,000 worth of work, they're never going to be the same. And if it's a company that has capacity to be a GC and do $2 million worth of work.
Do we still use the city's system?
Yes.
Do we update it?
Yes.
Okay.
So the city updates it.
The reason why I ask is
weekly.
because
No.
I know there's some companies that have been pulled off that list because they've gotten too big. So I just want to make sure that we aren't keeping those same companies, because as they grow, they'll eventually take. So I
Right.
completely agree with you on that.
So at a 3-year period, folks exit out of the program.
Makes sense.
The city has likewise changed the boundaries which define who can qualify as a Tier 1 or a Tier 2 company.
I completely agree with you. 100% on that. Any other questions?
Just a couple.
Mr. Pullman.
If possible, I'd ask that the board just get regular updates on this SEB program like we did back in.
Could you speak just a little louder? I can't hear you.
I just was wondering if we could get regular updates like we did in June of last year on these SEB dollars paid out. And then my final question, this is kind of a big question, so maybe later in the week I can, and it may be more for Ms. Byrd. The bond market has essentially crashed in the last 6 months, and I'm wondering if that could be, well, the T-bill's gone from 3.2 to 2%. So I'm wondering, is that something that OPS could take advantage of as it decides, how to sell, when to sell the bonds, when to issue them? Because I asked that question when the folks from the law firm were here, how active they are. And, I guess we don't want to get too cute with issuing the bonds, but if there's advantage to be had with historically low rates, I didn't know if that's something that the district, how active they are in doing that.
Is that a question for Bruce Leffler?
I don't know who best to ask that is, but
I think we could.
We'll get an answer from Emeritus, who's our consultant.
Okay. Mrs. Godding.
I think we just have to be careful on crashing bond markets, because I was just with experts in the bond industry who said to me, and I've seen reporting, the bond market is actually doing really well right now, and interest rates are really good. And so, yes, T-bills and the there's a lot of factors that play into it, and there will be a lot of factors that play into our next tranche. So I would say Bruce is probably the person to ask. We certainly got really no premium on the first tranche of 2018, and we'd had great premium on the on the 3 tranches in 14, I think. Is that correct? Yeah, that's what I thought. So I just think we need to probably different wording, and so probably Mr. Leffler is probably the person to chat with on that.
Extremely safe investment.
We will get you the information that you requested on what the profile is of the current bond market for all board members, and try to get that for you for Sunday's updates.
Is there any other questions from the board? Thank you, Mr. Cozart.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. And Mr. Summers. Moving on to, I believe, we have one more policy committee update. The chair, Ms. Amanda Ryan.
Thank you, President Mark Snow.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. So we had a meeting in May, and we're once again just trying to come up with a policy review schedule so that we keep up to date. And in September and October, for our policy committee meetings, we'll review the 100 level policies, and we'll take them as a whole batch to the board to do first reading and second reading and approve, just so that we can stay on top. And then from and that'll go in front of the board in November, and then November and December and January we'll do the same thing with like the 200 or 2,000 and then our 3,000 level, and that will continue through 2020, the summer of 2020. And then our next meeting, which will be the July meeting, we'll focus on board governance. So if there are topics within board governance that you would like us to discuss, or any concerns that you've had, please let me know or let Mr. Ray know so that we can put that on the agenda and discuss as a committee and bring you some potential board governance policies.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan. Mr. Pullman.
Just a quick question on one policy. And we don't need to do it tonight, but I'm wondering if we could get an update on the advertising policy in the district.
Yes, so we did talk about that in our last meeting, and we're going to have Mrs. Farmer's office tell us how they go through the process to determine the advertising, and then make sure that our policy ends up aligning with that, and then we'll bring that in front of the board.
Thank you. All right. Sorry. We have a receipt of reports, the OSERS. Do you have a question? Ms. Scott.
I have a question on the receipt of reports. Is there a reason they appear to be in duplicate, but are they the same thing on both sets of attachments? I just was curious. It looks like it's duplicate, but I wasn't sure. On my...
I don't think they're duplicates.
Is
On
it
the
just the same
attachments,
thing?
one's a letter, if I'm correct.
I have it listed twice,
Yeah, I have a letter and I have the actual document.
and they're both PDFs. But anyway, I just...
Yep, one's an actual letter from the executive director, Cecilia Carter, if I'm correct, addressed to the board president. And then the other one is the actual evaluation. And I can pass that out to you guys.
Each one shows up twice. It looks like it's been double, but I just wanted to make sure it was just double uploaded and not
The same.
different documents.
It's not on Mr. Snow's, but
It's not on mine either.
It's on hers.
Ms. Goddard's is one.
Automatically downloads to your computer, and then when you open it, you
Yeah.
see it twice.
Technology. Well, thank you guys so much. Dr. Holman?
I move that the Board of Education go into closed session for the protection of the public interest and for the prevention of needless injury to the reputation of individuals, to discuss with the superintendent, secretary to the board, and legal counsel, real estate negotiations, pending litigation, and legal advice.
Second.
There's a motion to go into closed session by Dr. Holman, second by Ms. Ryan.
Just quick clarification. The item that was pulled from the agenda was not placed back on because it will come back in the future, is that correct?
Correct. It will come back with an actual dollar amount attached to it. Not to exceed a certain dollar amount. Correct. There's a motion on the floor. Mr. Ray, roll call, please.
Ryan?
Aye.
Smith?
Aye.
Snipe?
Aye.
Snow?
Aye.
Gadding?
Aye.
Hallman?
Aye.
Cracky?
Aye.
Pearlman?
Aye.
8 aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Let me remind the board that the purpose for closed session is for the protection of the public interest and for the prevention of needless injury to the reputation of individuals, to discuss with the superintendent, secretary to the board, and legal counsel, real estate, negotiations, pending litigation, and legal advice. Let the record reflect the board went into closed session at 8:04. Let the record reflect the board came out of closed session 8:46. Meeting adjourned.